Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. After a month away, I am back. And man, I missed you guys. I hope you missed me. It's been just crazy at work with the holiday season. Man, it's just been too much to keep up with. And unfortunately, the podcast suffered a little bit. But in all the years I've been doing it, I've done my best to keep a steady thing going out. So let's hope we can get back to that. How are we going to do that? We are going to do that with episode 170, discussing Miss Whitney Cummings, a great comic on the scene. What is it? January 17th, 2023. We're in a new year, the year of the rabbit. So if you got a rabbit, you go say, I got a clown sitting right next to me. So we're in the new studio here. I decided that's it with the high tech stuff. We're going back to, because the more high tech you get, the more problems you can have. If you just keep it low key and nice, and we haven't given the clown here in the studio name yet. So if you got a good, name for the clown here, send it over in the comments, on if you're listening on YouTube or whatever platform you're listening on. Go to www.denniswirth.webs.com. That's my website. Send me a message. What should we name the clown? I'm sure Whitney Cummings would have an excellent name for a clown because she is quite the comedic genius mind. Same show, same sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. Go to www.gvegas.webs.com. Put the whamma jam in your mouth. Check it out, man. We got our new spokesperson, Tim Wakefield, over there. Pretty proud of that. Tim's pitching some buffalo sauce, man, and get it shipped right to your door. You want to send to a friend, get it shipped right to their door. It's easy, man. Couple clicks. You don't got to go to the grocery store or nothing, man. Yeah, I guess back in the day, the days of the Joan Rivers and the Phyllis Dillers. I mean, you really had to say, separate. Well, this is the best female comic category as opposed to this male comic category because back then there weren't many females in comedy. It was a male dominant field. Nowadays, me doing comedy, there's easily just as many female comics doing comedy as there are men. And man, you really got to do something special to stand out. This woman stood out, Whitney Cummings. So let's get into it. Comedian, actress, writer, director, producer, investor, and podcaster. Remember that freaking cold that I caught the day before Thanksgiving? We're freaking January and I'm still coughing. So who has a cold for a half a year? I'm not sure. I guess I do. Back to Whitney Cummings. Let's see. Her parents divorced at age 5, which I've often said if you had a messed up childhood, that's why most people go to comedy because they say comedy is the best medicine, laughter is the best medicine. We can't make you forget your problems, but we can make we can't solve your problems. We can make you forget about them for a little while. They're in a comedy show, so yeah, my father he couldn't stand to see anybody happy. He was just such a military miserable dude, and just I guess it was the escape comedy. That was a little bit of laughter I had in my life. I got the new cassette tape, put it on low. Dad don't hear it. Listen to it while he's sleeping, or comedy's your escape. And she said she was raised in a dysfunctional alcoholic household. And I don't know, maybe my dad should have been an alcoholic. Maybe that would have freaking calmed them down. Maybe I don't know. Maybe would have been more problems. I don't know. But man, nothing could make this guy happy. Maybe alcohol could have did it. I don't know what could have did it. Let's see. Graduated high school in 2000. Um, during which she interned at NBC-owned WRC TV, which is a local television studio. I was on LTV, LATV, which later became LTV. Leominster, a town outside of Boston here in Massachusetts. Had the show The Comedy Kitchen. Had some pretty big names in the area on there. It had fun as heck doing TV. Did internet radio before that, and hey, here I am with the podcast. So I just keep it going. She studied acting at Washington, D.C.'s Studio Theater. Let's see, with the University of Pennsylvania, during which she worked as a model at department stores, which, like you're in a small town, you drive through and you see mannequins, they're showing dresses in the store. Well, if you're in the big city, they actually hire people to stand in the window, put on dresses, they're live human beings, and act like robots or mannequins or whatever. And that's how, they show off their dresses. Let's see, graduated magna cum laude with a degree in communications. And she aspired to be a journalist. She never wanted to be a comedian. She wanted to be a journalist, which I mean, she certainly graduated magna cum laude. She had the brains and she had the looks, so I guess she had the whole package. But comedy comes, that's knocking on the door. It's an addictive hobby, comedy. Once you do it, it's Tough to get away from it. Let's see. She moved to LA after college and worked on Punk TV for MTV, the show Punk, which was a very popular show at the time. Let's see. 2004, she started performing stand-up comedy, which once you get out there to LA and you're in the entertainment business, that comes just a little itch comes in. Yeah, give it a little try, and once you try it, there's no turning back. 2007, Variety named her one of the top comics to watch. 2008, she tried out for Last Comic Standings, but did not pass the showcase. I tried out for Last Comic Standing. I did not pay. I didn't know what they were expecting. It's like I knew, not that I do a filthy act, I don't, but it's like I have questionable subjects and they're looking for TV friendly stuff. So I knew going down, but everybody pressured me to do it. I'm like, well, I'll make everybody happy. I'll go down. But I knew going down, they weren't my humor wasn't TV rated humor. That's why I do the podcast. So you guys can get what the hell I do. But it just goes to show you, if you go down to Last Comic Standing, they turn you down. Don't let it bother you. You can still make it in this business. Let's see. She worked on the Tony Rock Project, Maid of Honor. She's a roundtable guest on E's Chelsea lately, and named one of 12 rising stars in Entertainment Weekly. So let's just say this woman's getting a name out there. She was on the Comedy Central roast. This is where I first caught wind of her. I mean, who don't like the Comedy Central roast? I wish they do them more often, but she was on the roast of Joan Rivers, the roast of David Hasselhoff, and the roast of Donald Trump. So 3 people she got the roast. And 2010, her first 1-hour comedy special was called Money Shot for Comedy Central. And the old porn reference there, the Money Shot. Toward the Boston guy, Dennis Leary, on the Rescue Me comedy tour, and Douchebags and Donuts. So got her name in with Lenny Clark, the Boston legend. I worked with Lenny. I love her. He's a great guy, Lenny. Dennis Leary, haven't worked with him yet, but hey, he started in the same clubs we're all working here in Boston. I can tell you that. 2011, she created 2 sitcoms. She pitched them both. And I'll tell you, if you're a comedian, okay, and you pitch a sitcom to a television studio, you might as well go pay a lottery ticket because that's about how lucky you are if you get if they actually picked one up. She got 2 picked up, okay, not 1 but 2, which is showing you this. She's right about the time she's breaking. Everybody wants to hop on the hot comic. She's the hot comic, so they're gonna hop on and ride her comedic genius as far as they can. She pitched the show Two Broke Girls, which became a very popular show, and her own show Whitney, which only lasted 2 seasons. So ironically, the one that she was in didn't last as long as the one she created both, but one of the that she created that she wasn't in. Let's see, she was a talk show host for a little while. Love You Mean It on E in 2012. Lasted 11 episodes. Again, didn't Love You Mean It with Whitney Cummings was the name of it, but only lasted 11 episodes. Again, didn't catch on. Which, man, there's so many shows that don't catch. There's so many more that don't catch on that do. You really gotta hit lightning in a bottle to get it's a rarity to have a show that catches on. That's why they become so stars, because it rarely happens. She overworked herself and she binge ate, which I can attest to that, man. I'll tell you, I was I did comedy, and I live in Massachusetts, and I had what was like, I'm working, I'm not a full-time comic. I work a regular job during the day. So, I'm working 50 hours during I had like 5 shows in 7 nights, and I was up to Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire. But at the end of the week, I said, man, I love comedy. That was too much. I was working myself to death, but the opportunity comes. You can't say no. You got to do it. So, I can definitely attest to overworking yourself. 2014, she put out her second comedy special, I Love You. Now, again, was on Comedy Central, which nowadays it's Netflix. There's always that one big platform, but back in the day, it was Comedy Central. That's where you wanted to be if you were a comic. No flipping doubt about that. Let's see, her third comedy special, she actually switched over to HBO in 2016. I'm Your Girlfriend. Let's see. She had a supporting role in 2017's movie Unforgettable. After 6 seasons, Two Broke Girls was finally canceled, which is a good run. You get 6 seasons, that's nothing to be ashamed. You get one season. A lot of them are canceled and they make a full season. They have like substitute ones waiting. Let's see. 2017, she directed Female Brain, and she also starred in it. 2017, she put out her first book, I'm Fine and Otherwise, and everybody tells you they're fine. Sure, you are. Let's see. Here was an interesting I found. In 2018, she was head writer and executive producer for the revival of Roseanne for ABC. Which, like I said, back in the day, there weren't many female comics, and Roseanne was one of the females who made it in the '80s. She was like one of the big female stars of the '80s, which weren't as many as the men. Nowadays, there's just as many. But I mean, to be able to be one of the top comics of the 2000s, late '90s, 2000s, and go back and work with one of the top comics of the '80s, it's kind of what a I don't know how to say it. Just I mean, I'm guessing she was a fan of Roseanne. I'm not saying Roseanne's the reason she got in the business or nothing, but just to be able to work with the comedy legends you grew up, you know, uh, watching on TV. I remember, hey, I'm a Boston guy. I grew up. I love the Celtics, big Celtic fan. And Tommy Heinsohn, he was the play-by-play guy for the Boston Celtics for many, many years. And one season after the Celtics games, they gave him his own talk show where he interviewed people. And he honored Steve Sweeney, the king of Boston comedy. He's a legend in this area. And I was in such awe. I was like, oh, two of my favorite things, the Celtics and comedy. Oh, I just wanted to be Steve Sweeney that night. And well, I worked my way in comedy, and I actually worked up the night where I did work a show with Steve Sweeney. And it was kind of like, it was a moment I had to myself. I said, wow, I started out at a local bar just trying to make my friends laugh. And I'm all of a sudden working a show with Steve freaking Sweeney. It was one of those moments you knew you had made it. I mean, not that Whitney didn't make it. I'm sure she made it. But to work with Roseanne, a comedy legend like that, that's a whole nother level of making it. And, if you had went back and told a young Roseanne, hey, you get to work with Joan Rivers, that would have been her idea of making it. So just to work with those legends was something. I mean, I put out a movie, The World Needs a New Superhero. You can see that streaming on Tubi. That's Fox TV's streaming service. And Andrew Dice Clay did a little few second bit in there. And just to say, Andrew Dice Clay, one of the comics I idolized, was in my movie. I mean, it was just something else. Sam Kinison, my hero, he's passed away now, but I did get open for his best friend Carl LeBove up in Alaska. I flew up and I did go out to California. I got to interview his brother Bill and his wife Sherry for my cooking show, and it was just things you don't dream of doing when you're a young comic. Now, as we know, Roseanne, she made some what that was considered to be racial jokes on Twitter, which caused her to be booted off her own show called Roseanne. They turned it into the Connors, and they kept going without her. But I mean, tough being booted off your own show. But Whitney, she left the show after they booted Roseanne. I'm not sure, like if she didn't want to be part of the controversy, or if she said, "Hey, if you're booting Roseanne, then I'm walking," or I'm not sure how it all worked out. But I mean, the other people on that show, they're working actors. They got to get a paycheck. I had Eddie DeZine I had on, and I was like, "How'd you feel about doing?" He was in, the nerd in Grease. That was one of the questions I asked him. I was like, well, how'd you feel about doing Grease too? He's like, well, I'm not like a John Travolta or Olivia Newton-John who became, huge stars off of Grease 1. He's like, I'm a working actor. Somebody calls it a paycheck, I got to go do it. So he had to go Grease 2, or he had to go do it where, John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John easily turned it down because they had bigger stuff. Well, he didn't. So, Whitney, I mean, she's got plenty of work. She can go do whatever. She didn't have to do Roseanne, but the other actors, they had to do the Connors because that's a paycheck right there. And that's what you're in the business for, a paycheck. That's why you buy some G Vegas buffalo sauce. So I can keep doing this podcast and we can keep exploring the history of comedy together. All right. Now, we mentioned how she started out on Comedy Central, went to HBO, 2019. She made it over to Netflix. Netflix, they were just buying up every comedian to get people on their platform they could think of. She did her own Netflix special, Can I Touch It? She did a very funny routine about that. Go on YouTube, you can probably check it out. I won't spoil it or bash it or nothing by trying to to do it here, but it was an extremely funny routine. I think she said when she went out dating, she told her boyfriends, "Could you do me a favor and like not watch my comedy specials because they kind of get the wrong idea once they watched them, the type of girl she was." Let's see. Now that special actually, I remember it featured a custom robot, which I mean, he's saying Whitney's got the money at this point. She had a custom robot made look exactly like her. She brought out on stage and interacted with the robot at the end of her special. It was a lookalike, and that caught a lot of attention because I don't know any comedian has ever brought a robot of themselves out on stage to do comedy with. So it was something that had never been done in comedy before. If you can find something never done in comedy before, you've opened a big window right there, folks. Because they don't want to hear another joke about coffee that's been done to death. They want something different, man. All right, 2019, she launched her own podcast. Good for you. And I have not been invited on her podcast yet. Whitney, if you're out there and you're watching, this is Dennis Wirth from Funny Like Long Podcast. I review comedians. Will you have comedians on? And I'd love to come to your podcast. Let's see. Said her influences are Paul Reiser, which I do remember doing Paul Reiser. I reviewed him. He was one of the comics I reviewed, and yeah, well, that guy had a really interesting career. I can see why he was an influence to her because we talked about how what was it, Mad About You? He just made you love him on that show. Then he was in one of the Predator movies where he's the bad guy and he made you hate him so bad, and it just so showed the range of his acting genius. George Carlin, another one of her influences. Who didn't George influence? I mean, he was number 1, 2 comic of all time. Him and Richard Pryor. So hard for you not to be influenced more than us. Dave Attell, which we said on his review, he's the comics comic. He's the comic all the comics want to be like. Never mind the fans. Lenny Bruce. We all got a special place in our heart for him. He broke the rules and changed the laws so we can all do what we do today. So thanks to Lenny and Bill Hicks, man, one of the original Texas Outlaws right there. And yeah, another one. He decided he wasn't going to sell out and work clean. He was going to tell it like he wanted to say it, and let the chips fall where they may. Because everyone knows, if you sell out and work clean, you can always work, you can always make money. But they decided they stay broke if they had to, but damn it, they were going to say what they had to say. And remember, he went on Letterman and they chopped out his. He thought he was finally going to get his message out there, and they chopped off his set. And if I ever get the chance to do one of the late night shows, I'll tell you, if they allow me, I'm going to do the child sports superhero routine. And damn it, if I could ever do that, then I got the message out. Like I can see how Bill Hicks, he wanted to get the message out. I want to get my message out so bad, man. Maybe Whitney can help me get my message out. Children deserve both parents equally. That's my message. I use comedy to home it in. 2022 on Netflix, you had another one called Jokes. Comedy Good Morning is Studio 666. There's a studio name 666. Not gonna happen there, but yeah, Whitney Cummings. Just like I said, I remember Amy Schumer had said about her. It was another female comedian who was doing very, very, very well for herself. After Whitney got, because you can get too big for the roast. Okay, that's where it's the up and coming comics that get on the roast, and it's like once they're doing bigger stuff, they're too big to do the roast anymore. Well, after Whitney Cummings became too big in comedy to do the roast, they brought on Amy Schumer. She was the next up and coming comic after Whitney, and they said, "Do you hope someday you don't have to do the roast? You get too big?" She's like, "Well, I sure as hell hope so." So she aspired to be like Whitney Cummings, and she certainly she made it there because I'll tell you, she did a movie with Goldie Hawn, another one, got to work with a childhood hero like that. It's just, God, those are the things you want to do in comedy. Everybody thinks about the money. No, it's about the love of making people laugh. Whitney did it, I do it. Damn it, you should do it too. Tell somebody a joke at work. You don't have to be a comedian. You don't have to go find a stage and be a comedian to be funny. You can go around the water cooler at work. You can tell somebody a joke and just be the funny guy at work. Put some laughter into somebody's life, and you never know what somebody's going through. And if that one joke you told somebody in that one day, if that makes them smile, that might have been the only smile they had that whole day, and you don't even know it. So your 1 second of laughter that you gave to somebody might have made their whole day, and they might need that worse than you know. So laughter is the best medicine. Go tell them some jokes, just like me and Whitney. I miss you, Whitney. Big fan. All right. This is Funny Like Clown Podcast. We review comedians here. We have reviewed Whitney Cummings. Tune in next week. I ain't gonna leave you hanging for another month, man. Hopefully I never do that again because I hated doing it to you guys, and I hate it because I miss doing the podcast. I love exploring the history of comedy. I hope you guys are getting something out of it. I mean, the numbers are going up each week, so I assume you are. But I'm getting a lot out of it too because I love history and I love comedy. So that's why it's a great podcast because it's my idea. Tell someone a joke. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.